What if I told you that every single thing that we're watching right now is just completely orchestrated, that everything's being manipulated, and that these key characters that we see, whether these assassination attempts or these people go missing, what if I tell you that it's all has to do with the same exact scenario, and we're about to be in a wild ride? That and a lot more in 1 second.
Conspiracy, last days, geopolitics, the occult, and the Bible all collides here.
And it's all completely unrelated. All right, welcome back to the show where we go over everything happening in the world right now. And of course, it's always unrelated, completely unrelated. We have a special guest with us here. JT follows JC, one of my favorite channels to work with. What's up, man?
Hey, man. Awesome, man. I appreciate you having me on.
For sure. We got so much to show y'all today, so much to get into. I mean, it's ridiculous what we're watching right now. Every single day, something else happens, and somehow it always fits together perfectly. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd. So I guess you want to start right here. So we have Cole Allen, who was the alleged attempted assassin of the president last night, and he actually worked for NASA in 2014. First off, dude, come on now. How is it that this person worked for NASA of all places? Why do they all know each other?
No, that's crazy. Especially it was JPL, I think specifically he worked for. So JPL was started by Jack Parsons, who, if you guys don't know, was a Thelemite and a disciple of Lester Crowley. So you think about like the origins of JPL and Jack Parsons, obviously, besides being a Thelemite, if you guys aren't aware, it's basically a different variation of Satanism. So this is the origins of this. And I don't know if you want to skip right to this, but he was pictured at one point wearing this shirt, and you can kind of see it was a little bit obscured, but it was saying Israeli Defense League.
Something said something weird on it.
The IDL.
Yeah, so like, I mean, dude, come on, it's just somehow they're all orchestrated. And of course, when we get into NASA, we get into, of course, again, Aleister Crowley, Werner von Braun, Walt Disney, Moonchild Ritual. Of course, it's Trump. The same person, Bank of America has the mural with Trump standing under what looks to be a blood moon, and he was born under a blood moon. I mean, it makes no sense how all this stuff is just perfectly coagulated, like, I don't know, 2020, if you did that thing, the blood coagulated. So it's just insane. So yes, so when he worked for Nasha, he did a paper on a Henry Martinez. And so we have this page on Twitter, Henry Martinez, and the only thing this page has is his own freaking name on it. This is just, how is that possible that we have this guy who just randomly attempted to assassinate the president? He worked for Nasha. He did a paper for Nasha, or in school, and the paper, the name that he used in the paper, it was Henry Martinez, and now we have this Henry Martinez right here. And then we'll get into the background in 1 second, because the background is insane. What do you think the chances are, man, that this is even possible by itself?
And the fact that he has a Pepe logo, like avatar, that's also interesting. That holding the champagne, it almost makes you think like they're at this very fancy dinner party, and then he's holding champagne wearing a tuxedo. Of all the Pepes they could have he chose that one.
Yeah, it's as if they know that something, and not to be a fearmonger, I just feel like we're at the precipice of something. Of course, with the Pepe, and they use that for Q an awful lot too. So it's wild when you start seeing them frame this as time travel itself. Of course, the Trump, the Baron Trump, the last president. So we have this time travel angle, which we'll get into that in a minute for this background. Another funny thing people are mentioning is they think that the picture of Erica Kirk and that guy, they think that, this person right here is actually a future baby, like a future them. I mean, he does look kind of close. I don't know. It's to me, it's a little bit of a reach, but you can just add in all the stuff together and say it is kind of weird. At the very least.
Well, I mean, at this point, this timeline is so ridiculous that it does lead people to speculate into the absolutely insane. Like, what is this? Like, it's really hard to fathom like what is happening. I mean, I think a lot of people have talked about that. It does feel like we're living in like a simulation because it's so ridiculous. Like the news we get every day, where it's kind of like the idea that when every day is crazy, nothing is crazy, because this is quote unquote the new normal, right? Like is that everything is just, we can't believe our eyes. We don't know what's true. Obviously, we know that what we're told on the news is not true, but what is truth? Because at this point, especially with AI and deep fakes and all the things you can see, even Trump himself, I think he posted the other day on his Truth Social, he posted a screenshot of, it was the reflection pool in the Washington Monument, and he was saying under Obama and under Trump. And if you look at it, it's clearly AI. I mean, obviously they made under Obama, it was kind of swampy looking and it was green, and then under Trump it's completely blue and crystal clear. But if you look at the background, you see clouds, and the clouds are exactly the same. So it's clearly an AI image. Obviously, Trump is fond of sharing AI images of himself. But the other day, he fell asleep during a meeting, and the Trump administration was saying that was AI. No, that was a real picture. So they are trying to confuse us on purpose, is that what is actually real is fake, and what is actually fake is real during the Trump administration. Or not just localized to Trump, but in general, like what we see on AI. And I've often wondered about that, is the idea that what people think about Project Bluebeam is the idea that they're going to shoot up holograms into the sky. But I think Project Bluebeam might actually be what you see on your TV, what you see on your phone, what you see on your laptop. That's the kind of stuff that they could fake. And at this point, it does really take, like, what do you believe is based on what your reality is?
Yeah, I mean, all the brainwashing and the emotional manipulation that we're seeing, and we're about to get into this in 1 second, because we have, of course, when this happened, every single account on Twitter comes out and says, we have to build the ballroom, of course, play on word. But I think it's just very humorous, because this, like, the manipulation through, say, Bluebeam, people are being manipulated emotionally, and they're using this manipulation, this energy, this loosh, they're using it to create these things. There's remember April 8th eclipse? There's a lot of doomsday people who said the world's ending, blah 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 blah, and of course it doesn't happen like that, right? These things happen subliminally and spiritually before you would ever even see the outcome of them. So it's like we had that eclipse, and I remember I kept saying that to me it's like a giant demonic portal, a door is opening, and then we start having all these mass casualty events every single week, mass casualty. So it's like they use that as a ritual, and now we have again this third or fourth or fifth assassination attempt. I mean, right off the bat, dude, this is the most protected person in the freaking world. In the technology these freaking people have, they can read your brain through your iris. They can remake your brain, your brain wave patterns into actual words. They can see where you are with Wi-Fi. There's documentation of every single one of us, and it's just you cannot pull off a fast one on these guys without them wanting you to. So 3, 4, 5 assassination attempts, that off the bat is very mysterious. Obviously, Carolyn came out and said, there's going to be shots fired. Of course, we'll get into that in a minute, throwing the 666. And I'm not a hand sign person. I'm not like, they did this, they did that, because some people that we know look way too freaking far into, I can itch my face, crop. Oh, there's, so I don't play that hand game thing. But when they do it at certain times, that's when I pay a little bit of attention to, because obviously, all of us, when we first look into the Illuminati, all this stuff, you see all the symbols over the eye and everything else. But they're just manipulating us with our phones, and I believe that this is why they allow free speech, supposedly. I believe that they are allowing this purposely because people are being brainwashed right now. Did you ever see, you saw iPad Go 2, right? And
Yes,
after the B-2 bombers bombed the Iranian mosque, it shows the kid hooked up to the devil on the monitor, Satan on the monitor, and then at that point they're completely brainwashed and they cannot escape the brainwash. I think all this is programming people to accept whatever notion or narrative they want to give us.
Yeah, absolutely. What Kabbalistic magic actually is a change in consciousness. It's like manipulation. So I think that that's what it really comes down to, is the fact that they want you to feel certain emotions, and therefore lots of them obviously are anger and fear, because that's how people are the easiest manipulated. Is because that's why when you turn on the news, they want you to either be afraid or angry. Usually those are the things that they push the most. Those are the stories that obviously are the front page news. So things like this, where, you know, we're seeing conflicts in the Middle East, and you're thinking like one day they're going to show up with the false flag. So obviously this narrative is going to be pushed later. I mean, obviously this is going to be pushed like this coming week, about how maybe it could even be like dangerous free speech online. That's not free speech. It's quote unquote hate speech. And so this is what leads to words being violence, and therefore trying to censor people later.
Yeah. And so now, of course, with that Kabbalistic magic you mentioned, and of course there's that, they believe that they have to show us certain things. Now, this is weird because in that account, so again, we have the account, and the account is, again, this guy writes a paper or a NASA something. He does something, right? It's like a paper, and the character's name that he used is, of course, Henry Martinez. We have the frog, we have his name, Cole Allen, and then this is posted as the banner on that. And so this is pretty weird. Now, I've watched it, and I believe that we'll come right back to the ballroom. Now, look. This, in my mind, is kind of a stretch, to think that it's actually transforming, but it could. I do see the Trump face. I do see the arm in the picture. It could be, it could not be, but I also do believe that in the spiritual realm that all things are 1000% connected. Energy, numbers, words, etc. These things just coexist with us, even if we can't see it. So I think it possibly could be, but again, being on that actual page, and then you saw, you can comment on that, and then you saw this video talking about the Butler event. What did you learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, I fully admit that I was duped with the Butler assassination attempt when I first saw it. I mean, I think that's a lot of us, is that we want to believe what we're seeing is true, and I don't want to be so cynical that I think everything is fake, but going back to Butler and seeing the alternate camera shots, because again, you see like certain camera shots when you first see the event and you don't see it, but there was a video that I saw that they were moving the cameramen into focus, and the idea that even just so clearly that there's an active shooter and Trump is allowed to stand up and pump his fist, like the Secret Service would not allow him to get up. They would have covered him, and then they would have ducked out the back, and he would have been gone. But what they also did, they moved the camera people into focus to get that money shot of Trump pumping his fists with the blood on his face. And then they also had the crane lowered down the American flag right into the shot. And so now that shot is framed at the Oval Office. It's over at maybe not the Oval Office, but it's framed at the White House now. And so obviously a lot of people have commented that you have like a AR-15 shooting through somebody's ear. And it wasn't shortly after that, of course, after everybody was wearing the bandages on the ear for solidarity. The next time you see Trump without the bandage on, there's no marks. There's no scars. I mean, you think about it, like if you have daughters or you have a wife, you know that if you pierce your ear, that scar from that ear piercing lasts a long time. And I know eventually the piercing closes up, but you're talking about a high velocity round blowing part of somebody's ear off, and there's no scar. There's no noticeable markings from a bullet that's going. Obviously, again, I'm not a gun guy, but I know that they go super fast. It is like manipulation, and of course, Tucker Carlson's does some real good research into this. Is the fact that you think about the way Trump is and the way that he repeats things and talks about things, that he never really brings that up. And the FBI closed this investigation. And before they did, they hosed down the roof. They obviously completely contaminated the crime scene, much like they did with the Charlie Kirk thing, where they paved over the spot. When you have an active investigation, and this story just disappears, it honestly makes no sense based on like Trump's character and the way that he would present something like this. He would be talking about this forever, but yet he doesn't.
Yeah. And again, it's like, the whole thing is like them allowing him to throw that hand up. And, again, me too. I believed it at first. I said, how else could it happen? Right. Because, we don't really understand how deceptive this demonic stuff. But I think it's more than that. It's more than just the demonic and how deceiving they really are, but it's even more is just wanting to believe that not every person is evil. It's just giving the benefit of the doubt. I always say I would rather not judge them and be wrong, and live with that, that I was wrong, than judge them. They get killed for the truth, and I was against them while they were alive. That's what I always say. I'd rather give the benefit of the doubt wherever it's possible. Because even me and you, people say that we are controlled, we're Masons, and the stupidest thing you could even fathom. So like we want to give the benefit of the doubt. We know what happened in 2020. We know about all the population and what happened then. But we wanted to be nice. Like, well, maybe I saw the show with Joe Rogan and Trump, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe he was around bad people. Maybe this is just. But I think we also go out of the way to give credence where it should not be given. It's like we're too nice. We're like,
well, I think that's obviously in Christ, like we're hopeful. Like we hope for good things. Like that's what we want. So it's kind of the idea where if you had somebody on death row, and I would rather 1,000 guilty people go free than one innocent man go to the gas chamber or the electric chair, right? I mean, it's kind of, it's just kind of a worldview that you have where I would rather err on the side of being wrong about somebody who was guilty than condemn an innocent person.
Yeah.
So again, that's the way that they can take advantage of this. And I honestly do think that that's what they do, is that they take advantage of the fact that as Christian people, we do view things of hoping for the best in somebody with not being so cynical. And obviously a lot of people in the conspiracy, game, they are automatically, their default is everything is a lie. And part of me is like, I'm not saying that they're always wrong, because I think that they're wrong more often than they're right more often than they're wrong. But I don't know. I just don't want to be that cynical. I want to believe that certain things are true and things can happen. And I think the Butler situation for me was, well, what is the gain of faking this? Like, so I didn't get it. And I don't necessarily still fully see the full picture about what would be the goal of faking it? Maybe it's because I'm not as so cynical. Maybe I'm not so deep in this that I don't understand the evil and the plans that are thought out in many layers of like what's going to happen one day. But it does feel like with this thing, with the Correspondents' Dinner, it seems like they're pushing it so far where like even somebody like me, it was like, I would want to believe this is real, but what I watched seemed absolutely staged.
There's just a whole bunch. It's just, massive brainwashing about, like when you first wake up to the truth that the world's evil, that the food's bad, that the air is bad, that the water's bad, that all these people are part of a really secret society, and they've been working in the flesh for hundreds of years, especially DNA manipulation between these people and the royal bloodlines. And it's like you learn that. But the first thing you do when you first wake up is you say that everybody is evil, whatever. There's no what ifs. It's everyone is evil. I remember saying that, I was thinking that every literal person that existed was evil. And then you start seeing the fighting happening inside, because these these children. David Wilcock, for instance, we'll get into him because he has to do everything with what we're showing you right now, or a lot, and I'll show you how in a minute. But he was a targeted individual. He talked about, being in his bed at 7 years old and being hypnotized and brought out of his bed in the middle of the night to go somewhere that he did not remember, to then be returned to the house. He was a targeted individual. These people are selected from their youth. Maybe they have a certain portion of DNA with royal bloodline, but they find these people and they manipulate the crap out of them. Chester Bennington, Lincoln Park, Lincoln Park standing for that operation that they were doing, and Lincoln Park, Chris Cornell, they went against the system and lost their life for it. It's not like, okay, they're all evil. Well, yeah, maybe they were ignorant while partaking, but they were also against it and they lost their life for it. We see that over and over and over again. Because again, these people have contracts. There's an agreement in the spiritual realm with these people and the devil. That's why he has, more power over these people. Otherwise, people like me and JT, we have no contract with the devil. There is no agreement. There is no spiritual agreement, to where God has to say, with the laws of the spirit over us. So, I can't live that way anymore, thinking that every single person's evil, because it's just, what's the point then? You just wait for the earth to be destroyed. Of course, we have people right here. Go ahead.
No, I absolutely agree. I think that's the thing. We hope for the best, and we also believe that the Holy Spirit is greater than any spirit in this world. But I guess the thing that I always need to kind of remind myself is these people don't necessarily plan for next week, that the evil that we face is evil that does not sleep. So they're talking about, they're looking in terms of centuries, the way they're planning out these things. Yeah. So we might not understand it because we're seeing through a very narrow prism, but they're seeing kind of outside of what we can see. Yeah, and from that perspective, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to understand why they did something, because one day we'll understand. And I think that when you kind of look back and when you kind of revisionist history, when you start to look back at events and you're like, okay, so they were setting up a move that 10 years, 20 years later, this all came to fruition. But from this perspective, where it does seem like that with the idea, again, I think that it does relate a lot to free speech, is that they try to say that certain speech is actually violence, certain speech is hate speech, and then so that the political fervor and the demeanor, especially on platforms like X, it gets ratcheted up, and then so you have they want to blame whatever happened to Charlie Kirk, and then Butler, and then now this new thing with the White House correspondent dinner. Eventually, they're going to say, we need to tamp this stuff down. Or maybe it's even the idea of Palantir and the idea of pre-crime. So then they're going to say, well, this person was saying lots of things that were very provocative. And then eventually one day we're going to say, we need to stop these things before they ever happen. And that's my worry, especially as somebody who is obviously I'm a free speech absolutist. You should be able to say whatever you want to say in this country. But one day they're going to say, that's not free speech. But again, free speech is it's not about protecting the speech you like. It's actually protecting the speech you don't like, because who decides what's right to say and what's not right to say?
Yeah. And so right here, what we see is the image that we were seeing on the back of that mysterious page that mentioned the shooter. This image is actually titled Time Machine. So again, and we have the Q thing. The Q people believe in these time machines. So that's just extremely odd. There's a massive push right now that has to do with solely time machine. Trump, he's on a mission from God. They're putting out this, and by the way, this guy was normal. This guy was a normal dude, like so many people. These normal people, we have the Charlie Kirk situation, and that guy is saying that he didn't do it. You know what I mean? These people are being framed, but also I think there's a part of these people who are being just controlled from outside of their body. It's there's, JT mentioned, these plans and these goals are long term with these. It's like, Albert Pike's letter in the late 1800s describing the three world conflicts. It's like the Snake Eyes, the music video that Erica Kirk was in, and it showed, the exact date that Charlie was shot. Mm-hmm. But the thing with that is like, is that because Erica Kirk or the writer of the movie, is that because they're so intelligent? I don't really think so. I think that what happens is these demons, like you were mentioning, like everything behind the scene of spiritual wickedness that does not sleep, these things are the ones manipulating what's happening on the earth because they know what's happening. Like we are basically the only creature, the spiritual creature I mentioned earlier, that has these limitations based on time. God outside of time, Jesus slain from the foundation outside of time. I believe also the demons and Satan are outside of time. Time is a construct of man. So I think these evil spirits are working outside of time. And what they're doing is making sure everything plays out. Aleister Crowley, where did he get his wisdom, if you want to call it that, from? Well, he got it from the demons he was summoning. And you could say the same for every single, Marina Abramovich. You could say the same for Michelle Lammy. All these people, these warlocks, the ones in the open, they're getting real insight and real future from these demonic beings. And, we shouldn't be worried about the ones that we can see. We should be worried about the ones that we can't see. Because, again, we have people like Trump and all these people who are pretending to be good. But really, in the background, what's happening? In an older YouTube video, I showed you his apartment and all the Apollo worship in his suite. He had Apollo defeating an army. He had the spines of Apollo above the doorway. Everything was Trump, but then we had the AI image of Trump, which he put Apollo on there purposefully. Then we have the Arch of Trump, has Apollo on it. So an Apollo, Apollyon, Abaddon, is that it says angel over the bottomless pit. I think maybe it could be a fallen angel, but whatever the case may be, angel over the bottomless pit. Of course, we went over how I believe that, Nero Caesar in the 1st century, I believe that he transformed into Apollo. But one thing is sure. And the one thing is sure is that the people, the deities running the country and running the earth right now, they have plans for the people who are sitting up in high places. They did this Moonchild ritual, which I believe it has to be Trump. Then we have all the time travel come into play right now. We have Barron Trump, his adventures. We have the last president. We have Nikola Tesla being raided by Trump's uncle. So they want us to believe that there's something big upon Trump. I believe that there is something big, but I think it's something evil, deceptive, and nefarious, and they're using him to deceive people. And every time something like this happens, people are so much farther glued to this person. It's an energy ritual manipulation to brainwash society.
Yeah, what's interesting when you think about, especially one of the most often, almost kind of silly talking points that you get from Q, is this is 4D chess. Okay, so we see in the 3 dimensions, right? So we live in a 3-dimensional world. So what's the 4th dimension? Well, I believe the 4th dimension is time, because that's the only thing that we really can't see past, because we see in this narrow window of a linear chronology. But I do believe that God is the only what's truly outside of time, but I do believe that the spirits, they might see time from a different perspective than we. I think that they see different possibilities. And I think that's why they try to manipulate people through the idea of predictive programming. Because do you remember that scene in The Matrix when Neo goes to see the Oracle and she tells him not to worry about basically him knocking over that lamp or whatever, that vase? And then she said, what would really cook your noodle is if I didn't say anything, would you have knocked that over? So it's like the idea that they don't know that you can do that, and they can't force time, but they know how to kind of manipulate time, because they do see the different possibilities. If they can get you to do this, this will set over these dominoes that fall later. So I think that's interesting, like 4D chess. Like, what does that actually mean? It really is the concept of like that I see the move you're going to make before you make it. So therefore, I'm going to do this thing that makes you make that move that puts me into the winning position. Now, obviously, like a person like Trump he's very clumsy, he's very oafish at times, but it's not because Trump is so great, he's so smart, and he can see everything. He's working with people that are wizards, they're warlocks, they're witches. And so what witchcraft really is, besides the fact that, again, it's like through the Kabbalistic idea, is it's manipulation. But what it also is manipulating demons. But they think that they're manipulating the demons. But again, the demons could be manipulating these people because their plan obviously is not necessarily what we want. When your goal aligns with them, then they can enrich you. But again, these entities are nefarious, and they will stab you in the back in a second. So obviously, these kind of people, again, that's why maybe you have a little more grace for some of these people, because the evil people in this world are the most deceived.
Yeah.
Because they think that they're going on the winning side. But obviously, we know in Christ that there's only one way to go to heaven. There's only one winner in the end of the story. And if you're in Christ, then you do win. So we should not fear this. But what you see too, and especially when you think about this Cole Allen, and you think about a lot of these, assassins. Well, one of the main parts of MK Ultra was these Manchurian candidates, is that they were trying to create assassins. And so like what kind of incentive does this person have? Which is interesting, thinking like this guy was connected with NASA in any kind of way. And from Trump, like basically if you take what he says and you take what's happened, he's obviously all in on this Artemis program. He's all in on this space thing. So like, why, if him of all people, would want to take somebody like Trump out? And why would you want to throw your life away? To go back to the very beginning of it, is how does somebody get into the correspondence dinner where it's not just, you don't just have Trump there, you have many, many powerful people, and somebody's going to get in with guns and knives, and then they're going to run out of the place. And if you watch the scene of him, like this guy running out, he looks like the Flash. Is like everyone's caught flat-footed, that he just runs past everyone. How does that possibly happen? I mean, you're talking about like this would be like going to Fort Knox and trying to steal gold.
Yeah.
That you're going to walk in with guns and knives to a scene where you got the most powerful people in all of America there. And because you don't just have Trump security, you have all these other people with private security as well.
All of them.
I mean, it said it does not pass the smell test. It's the same thing with Butler, is you have Secret Service that obviously know where the best places to take a shot. How does a guy get onto a roof when the passersby, the people in the crowd see the guy, but the Secret Service does not see the guy? I'm sorry, that seems really, really hard to believe.
And you mentioned, of course, the demons that Trump is most definitely obviously working with, and it's just so fun. I remember even 2016, they said, well, the highest level in Satanism is MAGA. So it's just so funny how that, again, everything I feel like connects. And into that time travel angle, it's so ridiculous because we'll come right back to this shooting scenario, because we're gonna watch a video or two with y'all, just hitting the highlights of everything, a bunch of stuff we might not have covered right here as well, but if we have time. But the time travel angle, so we have, of course, David Wilcock being one of the 30 people now, the UFOologist, and that's the thing about these occults, they don't even value their own people. They will take you out in a freaking heartbeat. But David Wilcock was one of like the 30th so far. We just had 2 pass away yesterday. These nuclear scientists, these UFOologists that are just going missing. And one thing that David was, I remember watching a video of him years ago, and I was shocked that he would say these things out loud. I'm like, they're going to get him. That's the first thing I thought. He was basically talking about how these intelligence assets were manipulating Project Looking Glass to try to create their own outcomes. Because what he said was in 2012, there was a 2 different time events. Of course, we had Mayans Doomsday 2012. And in that, it was so weird because we had the Return of the Wolf, The Economist magazine. There was a bunch of weird stuff when it came to 2012. But then there was one alternate pass, which is like, if we make it past that, then for sure the end is coming, sometime about 10, 15, 20 years. I forget exactly. I'll show some clips of him in 1 second. But so we had this guy who was very far into Project Looking Glass research, and he knew what these people, and look, this is not anything new. There's speculation of this chronovisor that's under the Vatican where they can see behind in time, where they could supposedly see Jesus crucified. I believe 1000% these things to look through time, because again, looking through time, I don't believe is fake. I believe that it does. God himself, it's not that we are predestinated to go to hell, but God knows what the future already is. So he knows that things are already going to take place. And I believe that somehow these, demons and whatever else, they know as well. So I do believe that humanity, like this 4D chess with Trump, I do believe that humanity, whether by demons or not, can tap into this 4D, this dimension of time and see. So he knew two things. He knew, one, that there is a massive deception coming having to do with this alien agenda and all this stuff. Of course, when we go to alien agenda, what do we think of? Instantly, NASA, their space exploration. Then we have the space program with none other than Trump. And we have the Board of Peace, none other than Trump. So it's like they're setting us up for something massive, which of course he's going to release this space files or whatever the bullcrap that stuff is. So it's already this massive thing that's coming, looking to be coming soon. And one of the people who knew it best, who was targeted and who was hypnotized and who was, a certain letter K ultra, they just take him out. The timing of that to me is really suspect. What do you think, man?
Well, I think the really interesting part is, of course, because I'm a little bit of a Tolkien nerd, I think about the Palantir from Lord of the Rings. So if you watch those movies, it's basically this crystal ball. And so when you touch it and you look into it, that you can see possibilities of the future. It's like the future is uncertain. You think about even like going back to like Star Wars, is when Yoda can kind of see into the future, but he's always saying like the future is uncertain. It's always moving around. So I think that that's kind of what the demons is. And Yoda himself is a demonic entity. If you look into some kind of Freemasonry imagery, where like he comes from, he's a demon. Yep. So that idea that they can look into the future and see different kinds of possibilities. And I think that's why they need to try to manipulate you to force this future outcome that is desirable for them. But the dangerous part of the Palantir was the fact that when you touched it and you looked into it, the enemy had connection with you. So when they touched the Palantir, Sauron and all of the evil could see them, and they were forcing their hands to do certain things. So it's kind of like the idea of like manifestation. And I think that that's the dark way of kind of putting it, where we believe in faith. And of course that Jesus said that we could tell this mountain to be tossed into the sea if you have enough faith. So in the same way that they get your belief and your fear in order to, your louche, in order to force these outcomes that eventually work out for the plans of evil. Now, praise God that we know that the best laid plans of the enemy is eventually going to lead to their ruin, because God is sovereign. And God is not worried about what they're doing. And that's why we shouldn't be worried.
Yeah, definitely too. And you're talking about, forcing the outcome. So, when I was a lukewarm Christian, I was into the New Age probably in 2013-ish. And I didn't go that far in it, but I did go a little bit far in it. And I did see results with manifestation. So, the way I see the world is God created this world governed by spiritual laws that do exist. And I think that the inversion and the manipulation of the spiritual laws God created is how the devil is saying, do as thou wilt through Aleister Crowley, or eat the fruit in the Garden of Eden. And so I believe manifestation is basically getting God out of the picture and us trying to manipulate this energy, this spiritual governance ourselves. Of course, it's 1000% evil. You cannot, as a Christian, it's impossible to balance it. I've tried, it doesn't work. And it leads to death and it leads to hell. But so the spiritual can definitely be influenced by the minds of people, because again, we're stuck in this 3D. We don't understand, time. We don't understand spiritual significance. And so they're manipulating the human brain. It's like when the news is feeding you fear so much, they want you to basically think in existence, basically, these terrible things that are going to happen. So I definitely agree that the demons are doing that. And of course, they can only do what God allows. Even evil works for the will of God. So we do know that anything they're going to do, it was allowed in the first place. And of course,
Yeah, well, I think that what they do is manufacture consent.
yeah,
So again, they give you an idea, and you come into agreement with that idea, and that agreement can lead to its coming true. Because you really think about it, like that, even like a famous quote from like Henry Ford was, "Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right." So the idea that they plant this idea of fear, and that everything is going to lead to this ruin, and if we, and it's easy, especially the way, if you do watch the news, because that's what they want, is to think that there's no positive outcomes that are going to come from this stuff. So if you begin to believe it and you get to speak it out your mouth, well, then it's more likely to come true.
yeah. Do you have time to run through some videos, JT? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do
okay,
it.
sweet. So first, we're gonna just run through real quick. David Wilcock being targeted, and then I want to run through, if we have time, just one more video about, of course, Caroline throwing up the 666. So it's 2 short videos. So let's go ahead and run this real quick, and we'll talk about it as it goes.
What the hell are you doing, dude? You're going to lose.
Do you really want to see why this actually happened to David Wilcock? I'm about to show you his video in tears. Remember in my first video, I told you guys he was on the verge of discovering something big. So of course, right here we have David Wilcock. We have me saying, he's on the verge of something big that's going to happen. This will make sense in 1 second, because when the video opened up, he said, "You're going to lose." He's saying that for a purpose, and I know why he's saying it, and we'll get into it, but he is off on a little bit, because he sees, again, the destruction of the earth. He doesn't see the winning through Jesus. I believe that's the one bad thing we didn't get to see, the fruition of him, finding Jesus. But not just that, he knew things that were big. I'll explain it as we go.
It's to God.
Very
true,
upset.
folks. You need to
He says
stop
it's
this
true.
shit. Some things I don't mind talking about. I don't like talking about this. What the hell
See, he doesn't even like talking about what he's saying right now.
are you doing, dude? You're going to lose. You're not going to win. It's inevitable. We already know, because the future timeline is fixed.
So right there, you're going to lose, you're not going to win. It's inevitable because the future timeline is fixed. What he's talking about, of course, is his experience and his time in Project Looking Glass. And he knows that the future obstacle is the destruction of humanity, basically. Now, of course, he doesn't really know that through Jesus we already won. That the destruction of the earth, of humanity, of everything that's evil on the earth is going to happen regardless, whether it happens now, 10 years, 20 years. That eventually, fire will come out the heaven and destroy every wicked thing upon this earth. So he doesn't know that. But he's clearly emotional in this state because he doesn't even want to talk about it. And these are things that happened shortly before he died. What do you think, man?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely what I see with him, is that when you start to go down the rabbit hole and you don't have Jesus, that is the black pill. Because the more you start to learn, you're like, man, these people really are playing 4D chess. These people have had this stuff figured out. And despite our obstacles that we try to put in the way, it's like this plan continues to march forward. So again, when he's speaking like that, again, he believes it, and then you see what ends up happening to him. It's like it ends poorly. No, it doesn't mean we don't suffer tribulation when we're here, because obviously Jesus said that in this world you will suffer tribulation, but be of good cheer because I've overcome the world. So that's why when we talk about these things, we're not fearful about them. We're not trying to spread fear, because we know that, spoilers, Jesus wins in the end. If you're in Jesus, you win as well. So yeah, I mean, I could see that somebody who looking into the dark places in the world and seeing that these people have power. But again, it's only the things that God allows. So yeah, it's very sad to see somebody like fall into that idea that there's no hope. It kind of makes me think a little bit about like Infinity War. Like, when Doctor Strange is looking at all these possibilities about this future, and even now he's saying this is inevitable. Like Thanos says, I am inevitable. And that's interesting when you go into the next movie, which is Endgame. So Thanos wins, and I do believe that whole movie, that whole Marvel series is an inversion. So Thanos is more representing the God of the Bible than he's representing the devil. Thor is literally like described almost exactly like Lucifer in his movie. But so what ends up happening, Thanos wins in Infinity War, and then the next movie, the End Game, is about them trying to go through the quantum realm to try to change the timeline. And so when you consider the idea that what a lot of people believe about potentially they're doing at CERN is, well, this is not even a theory. They're working in the quantum realm.
Yeah.
So in the quantum realm, time works differently. And this is how they try to access these timelines. Is that the idea of like where the Mandela effect comes from? Is that what they try to really stress in that movie is the fact that our consciousness remains the same despite the past changing. So like one day you wake up and the Berenstain Bears are the Berenstain Bears. We're like, I remember it like this, because maybe you do, because that's exactly what it was called. But now in this timeline where they've changed a few different things, now it actually is changed. That's really what they stress in that movie, that the idea is like Back to the Future and the Terminator. That's not how time works. It works through, because again, if somebody went back to the past and changed things, like your consciousness would remain the same despite, because again, this is a future event that changes the time. So when you wake up, you're just like, dang, I remember things being different than the way they are.
Yeah.
So I do think that's interesting. Like the idea that he's literally saying this is inevitable.
Yeah. He has so much of the truth, but he's missing the final part of the truth. You know what I mean? He is
Right.
like, he's understanding, he's in that total black pill, but the black pill has a good ending. It's like, even though all this is evil, they're still good, and this is happening. So
yeah, the lie in Infinity War is when Doctor Strange looks into like a million different possibilities, or like millions of different possibilities. He's saying that there's one possibility they could win, one scenario. Well, in this story, there's 0 scenarios where the devil can win. 0.
Yeah. And so what we're gonna do real quick right here is, let's just I want to show you, really what I wanted to show in this video was the fact that he's actually a targeted child being picked up out of his bed. So I want to fast forward to that part.
Under hypnosis, the intelligence assets, he knows the contract that we will win in the end, not physically, not in the flesh, but spiritually, that Jesus already won. But not believing in Jesus, what he sees is the destruction of humanity, therefore he thinks it's the end. He knows the contract the government has with these benevolent beings of spiritual wickedness in high places.
So of course, yeah, like I said, he knows the evil contracts that exist
That,
in this
and what I just told you,
reality.
is why. Did you know that David Wilcock is what the intelligence assets called a person of interest? What if I told you they were putting him under hypnosis the entire time he was a child? It's so easy for us to say, this person's evil, they're controlled, this and that. Not understanding they're in a very delicate, very adverse situation where they have these extremely benevolent societies that are controlling their actions even as children.
Why was I waking up under hypnosis? Why was I walking out the door of my house in the middle of the night, hundreds of times as a child, and I couldn't remember where I was going? And at the end of the thing, they just make me walk back to where I was, and then the memory is lost. And I don't remember what happened, but now I do. Now I do.
Pretty weird. So basically, he's talking about, of course, as a child, for some reason, some kind of hypnotism was getting him out of his bed, taking him to random locations. He would not remember it. And obviously he's crying. He's very upset about that. You can hear it in his voice. And it's just so crazy because now he remembers what they were doing to him, and now he's dead. I mean, come on now. He really starts to understand what all his life has been. He's woken up, he's telling people what happens, and all of a sudden he dies. It's like
Very sus. It's interesting when you think about like the idea that if you follow the Charlie Kirk stuff at all, both Eric Kirk and also Candace Owens have shared that Charlie Kirk was kind of this targeted person as a
gifted child thing, yeah.
and he had very weird oddities that happened where he would this is what he said. Again, you guys can believe him or not, but he would go run at night and the lights would flicker, like the stoplights and everything like that. The street lights would flicker, and he talked about having like prophetic dreams and weird things, and so he was a targeted person. And I remember Candace Owens basically saying like they put him in some kind of she called X-Men school. So, but it's interesting, like especially when you go to David Wilcock, is like that how mind control works in these things, and like basically shown through fiction, like Stranger Things, which are real programs. Stranger Things was based on the Montauk Project, which is actually a real thing. You look up Camp Hero and all that stuff. Is that how they really get these kids to basically have whatever their supernatural powers is through trauma. So what you kind of see is this trauma being revealed, and I think that the the mind control is not perfect, but they can trigger these people to bring them back to it. So yeah, I think that that's exactly what you're seeing with him, is that he did have some kind of spiritual significance from their perspective, and that's what's being bore out right here. And so again, Charlie Kirk, whether you believe he's alive or he's dead, but he's gone now, and David Wilcock is gone as well.
Yeah, and of course, in that video, of course, that's why I actually mentioned, people are so quick to judge the person based on where they were in the past, but many people will die to tell the truth. It appears in our world right now. And all these people have something in common. Like you said, the gifted kids, the targeted children, the targeted individual. And these people are followed around. Like he mentioned, the lights going out, One thing about demons, which they can call ghosts and spirits, there's a very... First off, RF, radiation detectors, pick up demons. They pick up ghosts. It's like a spiritual radiation thing. It's almost one and the same, technically, And the lights going out, again, that's another symptom of being followed around by demons. Like you see the scary movies, right? And what you see is...
All of them do. Again, like in Stranger Things, is that when the Demogorgon's around, the lights have issues. Even not only just the Demogorgon, when Will Byers is in the Upside Down, he's communicating with his mom through the lights. She hangs up all the Christmas lights. And like literally in the stores, you can buy a Ouija board, and they even call it that. It's like a Stranger Things Ouija board, and it's basically like a light bright. It shows like it's based on the lights is how you can communicate with ghosts or the dead or things in the Upside Down. So yeah, that is in almost every scary movie, is that they go into a room and all of a sudden the lights start to flicker, and then an apparition appears. A demonic entity appears.
So with Charlie, you had he's clearly being followed around by whether monitoring spirits, demons, maybe fallen angels, whatever it is, he's being followed around by entities. Because targeted doesn't just mean the government's after you, the intelligence assets. No, targeted, because again, remember, these governments are actively in agreements with demons. They also have these special classes and what's it called when they have the remote viewers. They're actively working with demonic spirits the entire time, and not all of them know it. So Charlie, all these people, they're followed around by demonic spirits. They're targeted both by intelligent assets and also by the government. So it's and then when they pass away, all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's all staged, it's all bull crap. They're part of the... It's a fake person. He's about to be rebirthed 10 times, and it's like, no, I think people really do freaking die, and it happens every day.
Absolutely, they absolutely die. I mean, it would be very naive to believe these people don't die, and it's that secret societies are run by control and fear, and obviously that fear is that if you cross us, then you're gone.
Yeah.
You're disappeared. So, yeah, it's interesting to even think about the idea that, like a lot of the Marvel movies, like they're based on like the X-Men, like as Candace Owens was talking about the X-Men school, that these mutations that bring about these superpowers, if you think about, he's with the X-Men basically in the comic books, but not in the movies, just based on probably, copyright stuff. But Deadpool. So if you watch the first Deadpool movie, Deadpool has these mutant powers, but it had to be manifested by him being tortured. I think that that's what they do, is that
Absolutely.
They identify certain people. And the real question would be like, how do they identify these people with special powers? I think it's through the demons. I think it is through remote viewing, is like, because how would they know? Because the thing is, the enemy is not omnipresent. The enemy is not all powerful. So he needs this kind of hive mind. So they're using demons to target certain individuals. And these individuals, in most of these cases, they're targeted very young. You think about like these people are like, they're picked out early on. And the best way the enemy can manipulate people is to push you in a direction you already want to go. So they identify like somebody like perhaps like a David Wilcock, who's pushing very new age ideas. He's pushing this alien agenda that is on their side. And then so once they start to try to resist the message, or maybe they gave access to new information, and now they're saying, "Ooh, maybe I've been tricked, and I'm trying to get away from this." Well, they can't have that because you think about it, it's not just them, and you think of like a Charlie Kirk situation where I believe that he believed what he was doing was right, and then when he started to have second thoughts about it, and he was starting to bite the hand that feeds. If they did not make a public display about him being taken out, it would give people the idea that you can just leave.
Yeah.
But that's the whole deal with the devil.
Yeah.
It's like that. No, you cannot leave. It's a Hotel California. You can check in, but you can never check out.
Yeah, it's a stab in the back. You know, Charlie passes away, and then what do you know? You got Trump posting an AI picture of Charlie with a certain flag behind him over the ocean. I mean, it's just a major slap in the face. You know, because of course Charlie said, "I wonder if there's a stand down order on that certain date in October a couple of years back." You know, because it's a fortress, and so things as Charlie lived. And you know, he was being groomed as a child. So as he learned more information and was able to see things clear, he's like, "Whoa, hold on, I don't really want to be a part of this." So he started pulling back, losing money in these different offers and stuff. But then when all this stuff happens and supposedly a Fluffy whatever took out Charlie, we have these major stab in the backs, man. It's like, oh, here's him with a flag, and he was a friend of a certain people. Like it's just
right. And then
it's crazy.
The war that he absolutely opposed
is on.
Is now they're trying to insert words in his mouth to say, well, he would have supported President Trump no matter what.
Yeah.
But of course, he's not here to speak and actually say what he would have said. So I think that's interesting, especially when you see like the images of like Erica Kirk at this correspondent dinner, leaving and have a cameraman perfectly framed where he can not only get her boohoo crying walking out of there, but also audibly saying, "I just want to go home." Like, what are the odds? Like I said, it kind of reminds me about the Butler situation where, again, you might have an active shooter. I mean, I think that for most people, if you hear gunshots, you're getting down and you're getting away. And then you have camera people being pushed right into the very front frame where the last thing you do is a bullet just whizzed by this guy's head. And I'm going to turn my back to it to try to get a picture of him pumping his fist for his campaign ad.
Absolutely insane.
That's not realistic. That doesn't make sense.
And so yeah, definitely. And then so actually, I don't think we got time to run this last video, but the only thing I want to show in this last video is clearly how she's throwing up the 666. So she throws up the 666. I'm not even gonna play the audio. She throws up the 666. You can see it right here clearly. And then right after she said, "Everyone needs to watch this right now because there will be shots fired." Now, of course, you know, we know that shots fired is grammar or speech used, you know, for things like this, right? Oh, shots fired. We get that part. We're not stupid, right? But when she's throwing up 666 right before there'll be shots fired, everyone watch this, it almost seems like it's very possible that she was aware that maybe this was going to happen. Because again, there's no way it happened naturally, organically. There's no way anyone could just get in and pull that off. It's just a complete crock of bullcrap. So it's not just the hand gestures, right? But it's the hand gesture right before she says there'll be shots fired. You really need to watch this. To me, it was like, you know, even if it was not meant that way, you know, a lot of times we can speak things that are going to happen in the future. It's kind of like, you know, we have like these premonitions of what's going to happen. And even if we don't, sometimes we speak, you know, we got in a car wreck a couple years ago and one of us said like, it's going to be a bumpy ride right before we got into a wreck. And then what do you know? We got in a wreck right when that was said. So sometimes we speak things that are going to happen in the future because it pops up in our subliminal mind because something out there can see it, but we can't.
Well, it's a phrase that you've heard.
Yeah.
But typically it's like you might say it after somebody said that, you know, somebody said something controversial. Oh, shots fired. But to predict shots fired is kind of weird. You might say, expect fireworks. I guess even if she said that, I don't know if that'd make it better. But it's interesting. I want to say there was a headline from CNN because Trump, you know, obviously he was president for 4 years. I guess this would be his 6th year as being president. And he has never attended the Correspondents' Dinner until this day. Man. And the CNN headline was, "Expect the unexpected."
Oh, my goodness.
So
Yeah.
she says shots fired. And yet it's just not something that even makes sense. Again, you thinking about this person is the president's press secretary. He's the White House press secretary. Like, she doesn't know like what certain words have kind of like what people think when they hear that, because just based on the idea that the most public assassination we've seen probably since JFK has been Charlie Kirk, or maybe it could be Bobby Kennedy or MLK, whatever. I mean, the point is, it's been a long time since you had something public like that where the whole world saw it. And so, like, you would think that you would have a little bit of sensitivity for that idea that President Trump is supposedly took a bullet to the ear. And so you say shots are going to be fired.
Yeah, you wouldn't
at
do
this
that.
thing, and then literally shots are fired. Or, I mean, maybe not literally, but we think that their shots are fired. I mean, that makes you feel like that's just too on the nose. It's like it comes down to like this predictive programming. Like, you hear that and you're like, something about this just stinks all to high heaven.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, it's just absolutely freaking insane, man. Like you said, it's not organic. It doesn't make sense. If it did make sense, I'm open to being wrong, but to me, that just seems like a complete setup, and it's just, I think we have a lot more to expect. I believe that we are just seeing the beginning of this crazy facade that we're living in.
One more thing real quick is that, so you see the very obvious kind of plant right-wingers on X all saying the same thing, that we need this new ballroom. But
yeah, come on now.
Based on what I thought that I knew, was this thing was going forward anyways. Like, did they need some kind of public consent for this? Because it seemed like it was already happening. Because I played a video on my podcast showing that Trump's already started doing this. So it's already happening. Like, what is the need for that? And again, that's the thing where we don't necessarily need to understand their plans, but I mean, it does seem very coordinated, because that's the first thing you think of. Like, this hive mind, they immediately say, well, if they'd had this ballroom, everything would have been fine. Like, they can't stop people from getting in normal doors. I mean, so the ballroom he's talking about having is supposed to be like bulletproof and drone proof. But we're not talking about people shooting from the outside. We're talking about somebody letting somebody in with weapons. Like, how does that happen? It's like, Can you imagine like somebody going into a court? I mean, you think about the idea, like, if you went to your city courthouse, do you think you could get in there with guns and knives? No, you couldn't. So, like, the point is, if somebody got in there with weapons, they were allowed to get in there with weapons. So regardless if you have a ballroom or not, if certain people let them go in the room, then it won't matter what kind of security you have on the outside of it.
Yeah, exactly. I forgot to mention that, but I think that, I think that was just energy. I think they wanted all that energy to go into that ballroom to give it some more. Maybe they're going to do a special ritual in there, and someone's going to pass away. Maybe a deadly wound that a parallel from times past, and you know what I mean? Because they're obviously framing some stuff for us to believe.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, man. And unfortunately, we ran out of time. We went way over. Do you mind if I pray us out?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't mind if you pray.
Sweet. Dear Father, we thank you, Lord, that we can come before you on this video, Father, that we can be around other like-minded people, Father. We know we're 2 or 3 in the midst, that you are with them. Dear Father, I pray that you just remove all the darkness, all the clog from our eyes and our ears, that we can see and that we can hear. I pray we don't be too caught up with things of the world, but things of you and your Spirit and your Son. We thank you for salvation. We thank you for all the mighty things you've done in our life. And we pray for the boldness to go forth boldly, Father God, that do the good works that you before ordained. We thank you, we love you, and we praise you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, make sure you go find JT. It should list him right there as collaborator. Also, his links will be in the description. Make sure you follow him. He does so much awesome stuff over on his channel, especially when it comes to, first century history and other things you might not be aware of. So, man, thanks so much for coming on.
Anytime, brother. It's a lot of fun.
All right, man. See ya.